Hi guys, the following video some of you will have already seen. It's the final story in my previous video on 10 times Oasis threatened or insulted their audience. I'm putting it out again, however, with just the final feature, the number 1 time, because YouTube slapped an 18+ rating on the previous video, which means quite a lot of people who weren't willing to put their personal private data into Google ended up not seeing it. I think the 18+ rating from YouTube came about because of Liam Gallagher's furious rant at Earl's Court on the Be Here Now tour. That was number 2. So for those of you who, very understandably, didn't want to put their personal data into Google to be able to watch the larger feature, here is the last feature from that video. Fingers crossed this one won't get an age rating slapped on it, so if you haven't seen it yet, here is Oasis at the Riverside in Newcastle in 1994. Enjoy. And finally, in at number 1, we go right back to the early days, August the 9th, 1994, 3 weeks before the Buckley Tivoli gig. A fledgling Oasis played at the Riverside in Newcastle just one day after the Live Forever single was released. Now, just a little bit of context before we look at the gig. Newcastle today is a lot posher than it was in the 90s. It's moved a little bit closer to its upper class neighbour, Durham. In the 90s, however, it was rougher and harder than Glasgow. I had a mate who got caught in an attempted mugging with a Stanley knife in broad daylight in Newcastle, and the only reason he escaped was the would-be mugger was about 12. So that should give you some idea. I live and grew up just about an hour away from the city, and back in the 90s often bands would avoid it because things could get so rough. In the Supersonic book, guitarist Bonehead said, "Newcastle is always a rowdy one. You do a gig up there and they are mad. They are just fucking psychos, man. The place is mad, but great gigs." DJ and Oasis fan Joe Wiley was covering the gig for Radio 1, so we have some of the audio for what went down, as well as interviews with the band before and after. Here's a little bit of Joe talking to the band in the van as they pull up to the venue.
The gig that night was looming. It was about 20 minutes away. The Riverside crowd were waiting and the Oasis mobile was revving up outside and we got on it.
The last time we were at this gig, right?
What?
Bonehead played the Spoons the last time we were at this gig. It was a gig we were done with Verve and the PA went down. Bonehead played Should Be Coming Round the Mountain on the Spoons with Richard and Simon from Verve. Didn't you, Bonehead?
Went down Stormer, man.
Totally, man.
Down Stormer.
In the middle.
That's what my name changed, wasn't it? Spoonhead.
Yes, Spoonhead.
Drummer Tony McCarroll recalls how the night began. "We were playing to another hall that was packed to the rafters. It was a particularly wild one. I watched a full can of lager fly over the crowd, soaking those under its flight path. Radio 1 were broadcasting the concert live and Joe Wiley was watching us from the crowd. Liam was receiving the usual heckles and stood glowering into the crowd. So the gig started and the band got through 5 songs and midway through the 6th one before everything kicked off.
The first number was a new one. It was Listen Up, and then they went straight into a real crowd pleaser, Shaker Maker. That's Shaker Maker. That was the second number in the set last night. By this time, the atmosphere was really charged. The main impression that I got was that Oasis are a band that you can actually dance to. Everyone was going really wild. They followed Shaker Maker with Fade Away. Liam was kind of going for getting the vocals up in the mix at that point. The next track was Diggs' Dinner, which is also on the album that you're going to hear next week on the show. Then they played the real Me Pleaser, actually. That was the single Live Forever. And Liam opted not to go for the high notes in that track because his voice still wasn't kind of 100%. And then the 5th number, which was Bring It All Down. And how apt, because that's exactly what someone in the audience decided to do. Getting past security, launching himself on Noel, and what's that saying? All hell breaking loose?
Oasis biographer Paolo Hewitt tells it this way. "Oasis are on stage at Newcastle's Riverside and Noel has just gone into his solo on Bring It On Down. He's already aware of a guy down the front who keeps mouthing words at him. Oasis haven't yet employed security guards to watch out for them. Why should they? The crowd are pressed against the stage, except for this guy. Suddenly he's on stage and he's burying his fist into one of Noel's famous eyebrows. Pain shoots through Noel's head, Blood gushes out, splattering the stage. The next thing Noel knows, he's pummeling this guy with his fists, and Liam, of course, is next to him and wading in as well. Panic in the Hall of Riverside. In the Supersonic book, Noel says, "At that point we didn't have a light show, it was just strobe lights. You know what strobe lights are like. When they flick fast, you don't really know what the fucking hell is going on." Of course, there's a fight, and loads of people jump in, and I hit somebody on the head with my guitar. Bonehead says, "Liam's trying to hit this guy with the mic stand, and Noel's trying to hit him with a guitar, like fuck off our stage." Noel adds, "We kind of did that thing where we decided to fan the flames of the fight, instead of getting out of there." Tony says, "I pushed my kit over, and with Liam set about the assailant, who was about to complete a follow-up blow on Noel. Liam caught him on the jaw as I threw a flying kick. The roadies and security then jumped on him, which upset the crowd, who now viewed the invader as the underdog. Liam says, "I fucking grabbed the guy and pushed him into the pit. I kicked the cunt right in the head." Noel wanted to carry on. I said, "Nah, we're off." So we left, and then I thought, no, I'm not having that. So I went back on stage, stood by the mic and said, "Right, I'll take you all on. Not fucking 30 of you at once, but one after the other, and I'll kick your fucking heads in. So who's having it?" Liam's voice dropped to register. Not one of them came up. "Come on, who's having it?" Not one. Liam did go back to the mic, but none of that was on the Radio 1 broadcast. This is what's recorded there.
Basically, someone came up on stage, went for Noel. Noel retaliated, jumped into the crowd. Liam followed, and it's all gone just horribly, stupidly wrong. Okay, Liam's just come back on stage.
And what people we can't, because you can't have things like people's under up, hear people on the stage, right? So, sorry, next time, you know what I mean? Sorry, next time.
Bonehead says, "The crew were trying to protect the amps because people were throwing bottles of lager. It started getting a bit out of control. We could hear it get really hostile. The next thing was, pull the plug, the gig's off. It's getting fucking scary out there, there's bottles flying, all sorts of shit. Just get in the minibus and fuck off back to the hotel." The perpetrator was dragged off stage and it was announced that the gig was cancelled. This news did not go down very well at all. To add fuel to the already raging fire, Noel then picked up a microphone stand and raised it above his head. He moved to the front of the stage where he shook it victoriously. I watched as balls of phlegm were launched in his direction and became aware that the hostility of the crowd had boiled over. Bonehead and Gwiggs stood motionless with their instruments still strapped on through the whole commotion. "Come on, let's go," said Liam, and we quickly headed off stage.
This is really actually scary. It's not very nice at all.
The crowd's hyped up, they want to see something. They're not going to see the band, they want to see a fight.
So that's it for tonight, folks, because Vitalis has gone to hospital to get stitches in his face, so I'm sorry about that, we can't do a show without Vitalis.
In a way, I'm disappointed that it's for a band from Newcastle, but at the same time, I mean, the last thing Newcastle needs, I mean, it's got a reputation enough, the last thing Newcastle needs is an incident like this. All it does is just bring down the area to the level people think it is.
After being told to leave our belongings in the dressing room as they would be collected later, we were fired out the fire exit to the entry behind the concert hall and into our minibus. Our bus had seats that could spin 360 degrees and the windows were blacked out. The only problem we had was that there was a car parked immediately in front of us, which blocked our escape. As we sat and pondered our next move, the crowd erupted out of a door further down and quickly spotted the van. The mob soon surrounded us and were intent on our blood. "Just push the car out of the way," I screamed at the driver as the first brick left a spiderweb on the strengthened window next to me. He put the bus into gear and slowly, at first, started to push the car. All the band were now down in their seats with their heads between their knees. Bricks and bottles rained down on the bus. Somebody was attacking the back door windows with a steel pipe, and I was thinking that it was going to come through any minute and then we would be in trouble. The bus driver, though, suddenly created enough space to swing his vehicle around the car and we pulled off. I heard screams as we ran over somebody's limb and watched as those still clinging to the bus were thrown to one side. Noel says, to leave the venue we had to drive up an alleyway and past the front door. There are people throwing fucking bricks and shit at the van. All very exciting.
They've released like 3 singles now and they think they're God. They think they can get away with anything. But the Newcastle crowd aren't particularly pleased with this.
I've seen it before in Newcastle. I've seen it with the real people. It's happened again.
Well, I think it's a disgrace that people come to Newcastle, despite their reputation for being hard men or whatever, the reputation OASIS carry around with them. I think it's disgusting. You know what I mean? We want people. Newcastle's ignored enough. The last thing we want is bands refusing to play here because of reputation.
Coyley says, why that guy got on stage and hit Noel, who would know? But I think the perception is that they are a bunch of thugs from Manchester, so let's go and have a bit of a fucking do with them. Noel adds, I ended up with a massive black eye and had to wear shades for about 6 weeks on stage. The other brilliant thing was the guitar had got smashed, so Johnny Marr sent me another one, a black Les Paul he played on The Queen is Dead. And roadie Jason Rhodes adds, Johnny sent him a little note, something like, this guitar has got a bit more weight to it, you'll get a better swing next time. Noel got back to his hotel room after getting stitches at Newcastle Hospital and sat down with Joe Wiley once again.
I don't know about live forever, like White Riot was going through my head at that particular moment in time. After the chaos of the Riverside, we managed to get back to the surreal calm of the hotel, where I got hold of Noel and Liam and managed to speak to them. They were kind of bruised and bemused, the Gallagher brothers.
We've been saying for a year to our record company and our manager, we need security, and it's all, we can't afford it, but I mean, does it take somebody to lose an eye to get security? So that is what we're going to have to do from now on. I don't even want to have to go and like stop playing a song and go and beat somebody up who's trying to beat me up. I don't want to do that. I just want to play guitar. That's all I want to do. Music to me is the be all, and the fans of the band and everything is the be all and end of it, right, as far as I'm concerned. But I've only got 2 eyes. One goes, I don't get another one back. So at the end of the day, it's like, it's only rock and roll, and I'm not prepared to die for anyone. And you know, we as a band will give everything for them people who buy our records, totally and utterly, but I'm not about to like donate parts of my body for the cause.
Paolo Hewitt reports, at the Irish Centre in Leeds the next night, the band sat in the dressing room and listened to the Radio 1 broadcast of that show. Marcus, their manager, meanwhile, was on the phone wanting bodyguards and quick. The truth remains that while everyone had been gleefully building the bubble, they had forgotten one thing. It's a tough world out there. And, after the dust settled, looking back, Noel explained his theory on why everything really kicked off that night.
I suppose you get sick of being asked this, but it started off in Newcastle with a bit of fisticuffs. What was all that about?
The gig, for once, was like a really good atmosphere, because sometimes the atmospheres can be really sort of like hyper and charged and what have you. Yeah. He punched me in the eye with like this like ring on or something, and there was a bit of blood everywhere.
Really?
So he just sort of took the guitar.
Was he just overexcited, or had you done something to him?
No, maybe it's just because he thinks he's hard, he thinks we're up for the fight and that, and
right.
like, he thought, yeah, I'll have this.
Well, it's actually because he found out I was sleeping with his girlfriend.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
Nice one.
And that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments if I've missed anything, and as always, I'll see you next time.